today with my good friends Arthur and Ken, and we're at the North Carolina Arboretum, and Arthur's been kind enough to invite us back to work on a planting. Ken and I created one of the Carolina Bonsai Expos in 1997. This is a Hop Hornbeam planting with some small azaleas. It's on a really heavy slab. I think if I remember right, that slab weighed 135 pounds, but it has just come out of winter storage, even though it's early in June. We'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But so you can see the buds are just swelling. This is Hop Hornbeam, so it holds its leaves all year, all winter, and we'll be taking that off. But today, this planting has not been repotted since 1997, so that's 14 years. So today we're going to take it apart and see what we can do to reestablish the soil and get it back in good shape so it can go another 14 years. Hey guys, this is coming in now is Arthur Jura. He is the curator of the bonsai collection at the North Carolina Arboretum, and he does just an amazing job taking care of all of this stuff and keeping all these trees. And on top of that, he's a good friend, and we like his vision. So. But welcome, Arthur. You're going to tell us about the winter storage.
Yeah, before we started work on this, I just wanted to explain a little bit about how this has been maintained over the time that we've had it. As John said, he and Ken did this at one of our bonsai expos in 1997. It was a live demonstration. So you can tell a lot of work went into this piece in a pretty compact time format, 2-3 hours. Over the years, it's filled in a lot. If you were to look at a photo of how it was early on, everything was, of course, the trees were smaller, but all this stuff was much more compact too. And it's really prospered and done well. To the point where now the main job today, I think, is going to be to remove things. And so these azaleas, they'll have to be made much smaller. This stuff here, which is bluette, which was a nice innovation by John and Ken to stick this plant in here, and it flowers every spring, and people really enjoy it. It really likes this spot, and so every year it really expands, and every year what we have to do is rip it out and just put little chunks of it back in. But the main thing I'm concerned about is over time, if you were to look at pictures, you would see that the soil level on this has raised up considerably. It's planted mostly in muck, and the roots, they're growing. There are no walls for them to run up against like in a pot. So what they do over time is they start just massing up. They mass on the bottom, they mass on the top, and the trees start rising up. And it's finally time to get in there and really remove a lot of that old growing medium and replace it with new and make everything smaller. I think that's what we're about, rather than redesign, because the design on this has always been really, really nice.
Thank you. We look forward to working on it. It's going to be a challenge. A few of the trees had some pieces of wire, so we're going to start by removing that wire. We'll remove any of the dead leaves and start to remove the moss. You can see how over time the roots have raised this up. This was never this high originally. Things like this are constantly growing crazy. Look at this long 6 or 8 inch long azalea shooting off here to the other side. Those are the kind of things we'll be pruning off and chasing this way back today. Ken's working, he's taking the bluets off, he's taking the golden fern off and the moss off. You can see he's gotten down now to the into the muck and the roots. Discovered a couple stones that we forgot were planted in here. So, but using the rake, just removing some of that old spent soil.
That's the golden fern. roots.
Did you guys notice how these azaleas are much thicker and more developed, have a lot more ramification than some of these around here in the back?
Yeah, in the back here, there are two things that work that cause that. One is that these are growing in the shade of the canopy formed by the hop hornbeams, but also this is on display for 6-7 months of the year, and on display I mean in the bonsai garden here at the Arboretum, and naturally I don't want the back facing out too much, so the front side of this planting gets much more sun exposure, and that's kind of a problem. You can see it really clearly here with these azaleas, but it plays out with the other things as well. All the trees, if they're not rotated regularly, they're going to get much stronger growth on the side that faces the sun more frequently.
Talking about this straight, long branch right here, or trunk actually. Check that out. Not very interesting. Got nice ones in there that are really old and gnarly looking. You get that kind of stuff out of the way, you can shut those off a little bit.
You know, when you think about these azaleas representing like the rhododendrons that you find in the high elevations around here, when you get into those rhododendrons like we did up on Roan Mountain, and you see they have trunks, you know, as big as a man's leg.
Yeah.
They're very old plants. Well, these now are starting to take on that look. These have been growing here pretty much unmolested for 15 years or so, and they've really trunked up nicely. So we thin them out and show some of that off.
And you know, Arthur, the way those things grow up on the mountain is all the foliage is just on a shell on the outside, and then the inside is all just branches.
Yes.
Do you try to recreate that here, or do you try to keep the plant healthier with foliage down on the inside, less of just a kind of a cap?
I haven't done it on these, John. There are some other landscape plantings we have, like the Roan Mountain planting that we did, where I try to shape it like that. The trouble is, these things grow a lot more profusely than old rhododendrons up in the mountains do, you know. So you do all that cleaning out, and you have it looking really nice, and in the span of like 2 months during the growing season, it just explodes with new growth and fills in. And so it becomes a real maintenance challenge to try to keep it having that opened up look.
Yeah.
Also, you know, another thing that factors in is the fact that these are flowering plants, and of course everybody loves to see the flowers, and in the process of doing what we're doing, a lot of that gets removed. So, you know, this year it's not going to have that floral display.
You don't think it's still early enough this year that it'll still have a nice display next year, especially since these are Chinzan and late bloomers?
Next year, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. Not this year, obviously.
Right.
So that we're already past where we're in Columbia. All the Satsukis have already bloomed, so I'm just not thinking coming straight out of the freezer and ready to go, even though it's covered in bloom. So
that's right. I mean, if this plant hadn't spent the winter in a cooler and come out late, here it is, what, the second week? Start of the second week of June. And so this plant is where it would have been, say, in end of April, beginning of May, if it hadn't been on ice, so to speak.
What does that do to a plant with the shortened season like that? Have you seen any repercussions or any benefits?
I haven't seen any negative effects, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Like this piece, when we're done with it, it's going to go out into the sun. You know, it's 90 degrees today, and it's going to go from being 38 degrees up until last night out into 90-degree weather, which, you know, I admit sounds pretty harsh. But over the past 5 years we've been doing this, and I haven't seen any bad effects of it.
In fact, you were telling us this morning you've seen some positive effects in terms of leaf scorch.
That's right. When you have something deciduous like these hop hornbeam or even maples, you know, Japanese maples are pretty sensitive. If they go out in this stage, you know, with the buds still pretty tight, leaves not opened up yet, and they go out into full sun like this, even though it's June, when those leaves open in the full sun, they acclimate to it, to that level of exposure. And what I found is I've been able to grow Japanese maples through the heat of the summer, in full sun, out in the garden, without getting leaf scorch. Whereas if this came out, say, under a shade cloth or in a semi-protected spot, and then after the leaves had opened, it was moved out into the sun, we'd have all kinds of problems.
That's interesting. Okay, for the last half hour or more, we have been really thinning out the azaleas that were along the front. So you can see now that they are much, much thinner, and you can see the pile here on the bench of clippings. So. You can see as part of this process now that we've scraped off the top layer of muck and roots and exposed things like some rocks that we'd even forgotten were there, and you can see how the base of this trunk has really swollen, and there's a big root coming off that. None of that, all that's developed since the tree was there. But all right, the next steps have been taken. We've obviously cleaned off all the soil, taken off the moss and ferns, cut back the azaleas significantly. We just finished pruning the trees, bringing them back in a little bit, trying to bring the overall image down a little bit. Also trying to make sure that we maintain a different height on the trees. Move this tree over a little bit. It tends more to work with some of the other trees a little better with the shape. Gets it out of the way. This tree behind it as well. So we may use a guy over there.
Raise it out there.
Well, take it off with the thing.
What, it's stuck in the back too?
Here's a wire right here, right there. See it?
I guess we put that rock under there. Now.
Maybe we did lift those trees a little bit.
Okay, that's it. All right. Ready? Oh, it's a lot lighter without the rock.
Look at the growth. Man.
Look at them all.
Yeah, I've never seen that many in one place. They like this.
You got this too?
Yeah, you can see where it's stuck on top of it. And this is odd.
That's really helped out over the years, picking it up. You always have a place to stick your finger.
It is very little.
Well, these big ones, we got them now. Those have to be cut. And you know, this solid mass here, we do well to get rid of it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what the food is for, too.
Well, it grew around it.
It had to grow in some of it, but that's the only thing we need.
Is that right? Did you use any next time?
So it just got in, it just didn't grow in the top. But you know, when we
All right, guys. After several hours of work today, this is where we're going to leave it for this evening. It's most of it's been accomplished. Only the details are really left. Going to have to put some more moss on there, but we have replaced a good portion of the old muck that was there. We have trimmed the azaleas back. We've pruned the trees. As you've seen, we've removed the trees in one piece from the rock and reestablished them back on the rock. So So now it's time for it to bud out, start living, start really prospering again. So interesting day. It was really great. Probably the most interesting thing to me was the 100 or so grubs that we found in here. I was never seen anything like that. So, there's the video. Arthur will finish putting moss on it, and as he told you earlier, it will go directly out in the full sun. So we avoid the leaf scorch and keep the leaves nice and small. So thanks for joining us. It's been a long day, but it's been a good one. So thanks, guys.
And we want to dedicate.
Let's see if he puts that in there.
I don't think